Okay, good evening, everybody. It's 6:01 by my clock, so let's get started. My name is Jim Ostrowski, and I work in the Environmental Support Division of Eagle, and I welcome you to our Michigan Healthy Climate Listening Session. I will be the moderator for tonight, and I want to just go through a couple housekeeping guidelines, I guess, before we get started. First of all, you probably all noticed that your lines are muted at this time. I'll explain in a moment on how to, if you want to voice your comment when the time comes, how to do that. We are also recording the webinar, as you can see, and we will post it online on our Eagle YouTube channel in the next couple of days. This is the second listening session I've hosted. The first listening session was a couple of weeks ago. It happened during the afternoon. We had good participation on that one too. And we posted that one already on our YouTube channel if you want to go back and take a look at it. We have about 40 people logged in right now. We're expecting many more because I know we had well over 100 that pre-registered to attend. So agenda, we're going to start out with some introductions. We're going to go through presentations, the presentation by James Cliff, then go to some comments, and I'll be explaining that as well in just a minute, and then we'll do some wrap up. So I think what we'll do now is turn it over to James Clift, and we'll do introductions. So James and Kimber, why don't you come on?
Yeah, good evening. My name is James Clift. I am one of the deputy directors at the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy. Kimber?
Hi, I'm Kimber France. I'm an administrative assistant at Eagle, and I support James Clift and the Office of Climate and Energy.
All right, thanks. So you'll be hearing from Kimber in the background. She's going to help me out with the listening session tonight. With that, James, I'll explain, I guess we can explain how to do the comments after you're done. So I'll go ahead and let you share your screen and take it away with your presentation.
You're going to stop sharing your screen. Oh, there we go. We up there? All right. I say good evening. Appreciate you joining us tonight. As I said, I'm one of the deputy directors, and in my kind of team is the people who run the Office of Climate and Energy, and appreciate you joining us tonight for our second Michigan Healthy Climate Plan listening session. I'm going to go really quickly through kind of how we're going about kind of addressing climate in the state of Michigan, because we want to get your comments as quickly as possible. This slide is really to show really how much everyone needs to be involved with this effort. Public sector, private sector is really going to be an all hands on deck activity. As you can see, these are kind of national numbers for our greenhouse gas emissions, where transportation has recently taken over as the #1 carbon emitter in the country. In Michigan, it's still #2, but not by far. But you can see where we need to really start to sharply reduce these greenhouse gas emissions. We're really not seeing that drop we're going to need. So when the governor kind of took office, she took, kind of 2 steps. One, through an executive order, created the Council of Climate Solutions. And this is kind of a group of 14 individuals from private sector, academia, experts in these areas, teamed up with kind of state officials in a number of the agencies, really trying to help us identify those opportunities to effectively kind of reduce carbon emissions in Michigan, and really kind of figure out what solutions are going to work, identify, how those impacts could impact our residents across the state, and really try to make sure our solutions don't disproportionately impact kind of any kind of one group of residents, and really start to think about kind of what's that transition plan look like. Where might labor markets be disrupted? She paired that with executive directive to create the My Healthy Michigan Climate Plan. And the goal there is an interim goal of a 28% reduction by 2025, but then to be carbon neutral by the year 2050. The plan very much is really what we're geared toward is what's the first steps that Michigan needs to take? What are those steps in the next 9 years by 2030 that Michigan's residents and businesses need to take if we're going to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050? And that's really the goal of this plan is what are those first steps? This chart is going to kind of help explain kind of how the different pieces kind of work together. You can see the Council on Climate Solutions kind of there right in the middle of the chart. And what we've done is we've created 5 work groups underneath that with kind of the 5 major sectors that are impacting kind of carbon in the state. The first, energy production, transmission, distribution, basically how we generate the power that goes onto the grid, powers our businesses and our homes. Secondly, looking at building and housing. How do we reduce kind of the carbon needs of those facilities? Third, very critical for the state of Michigan, transportation and mobility. How do we transition to those electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles that we expect are going to drive the future of the country? Fourth, natural working lands and forest products, looking at kind of some of the landscape and some of the areas that both in certain areas are carbon producers, but can also be kind of carbon sinks for us. And lastly, really importantly, energy intensive industries. Michigan, history of an industrial state. How do we make sure and help those industries innovate in a way that's going to reduce their carbon impact going forward? We have a number of advisors kind of helping us here. First, the Council of Future Mobility and Electrification, which has already been created, and they're going to help a lot on that transportation mobility question. And they're already kind of engaged with that work group and trying to develop those recommendations. Secondly, we've got the Michigan Advisory Council on Environmental Justice, along with the Climate Justice Brain Trust. And their role is to really kind of help us develop a plan that looks at making sure it's equitable across populations in Michigan, making sure that we're identifying any potential disparate impacts up front and addressing those to the extent possible. I mentioned kind of just transition. We know that there will be kind of changes in the job market flowing from these efforts. How do we make sure that we're training people for the jobs of the future and making sure that we're not kind of leaving people behind? So the council will work with Eagle in developing the plan. The work group product will kind of flow into the council, and Eagle will kind of work together to create the My Healthy Michigan plan, which we're hoping to deliver to the governor by the end of the year. What we have here is kind of the 5 work groups. Each of those has a chair from a private sector, co-chair from the private sector or nonprofit, paired with somebody from within a state agency. Again, making sure that they've got the resources necessary to go about their efforts. We had opened up kind of participation in these work groups and have actually got over 500 residents of the states participating in these 5 work groups, which have already kind of started their deliberations to try to start to identify those areas, those steps that Michigan going to need to take to achieve carbon neutrality. What we have here and what we're really urging is that even though we have a listening session today, we're going to take copious notes and we'll transmit those to council members and the work groups as appropriate. I really urge people to also send in written comments, obviously something that can be read directly by those council members or work group members might be more influential. So at the top of the screen here, you see the email for the council itself. And then below that, emails for each of the work groups so that if you've got an interest in one of those specific areas, kind of email them directly, kind of your thoughts and recommendations for the steps you think they should take. As James mentioned, we'll be queuing up kind of public comment at this point, limiting it to 3 minutes per person. And at that point, Jim, I will turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks, James. So I'm going to share my screen again here. Bear with me. There we go. So yeah, like James said, we've got a list of people when they registered, they indicated they wanted to make a comment. It's a very long list. They're obviously all here today because we've only got about 60 or 57 people logged in, and we had about 70 people say they want to make a comment. So there will be some people who probably signed up but decided they didn't want to attend today. Maybe they submitted written comments, maybe something else. And Kimber also has got a list of people who emailed in and said they wanted to make a comment. So what we're going to do is go through that list first. And I believe Kimber has put, oh, there she is. Good. So she did put in the chat. If you look in the chat, the list of people that are going to comment in the first 10. And then when we're done with those, she'll put in the next 10. These are people who already indicated they want to comment. Once you make it through this list, we'll then ask people if they want to voice their comment that they can raise their hand. So you'll be able to raise your hand and make a comment at that time if you didn't pre-register. If you are on the phone, it looks like we have one person that's calling in on the phone. If you're on the phone and you want to comment tonight, you just have to click or punch in #2. Hit #2, and that indicates to us that you'll raise your hand, and we'll unmute you. So with that, what we'll do is we'll start off by going through, and this is what I have to do. I have to actually go through and then find you and unmute you, so it'll take a minute. And like James said, there's a lot of people that want to make comments. So I'm going to track time, and you each have up to 3 minutes. I will break in and let you know when you have like a minute left so you can start wrapping up. But please adhere to the time that you're given, because you've got a lot of people that want to make comments. They want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to comment, and you know, we can end at a reasonable time, I guess. So with that, hopefully you can see in the the chat the people that want to make comment. The first up is PD Miles. So I'm going to check to see if PD Miles is here in my attendee list.
You might see Daisha Miles.
Daisha with the D.
Deisha.
I am not seeing either of those names here. And if I do miss you again, we can come back and come back to. So I'm not seeing a Miles in attendance at this point. They might jump on later, and we'll call on them then. So next person up is S. Zimmerman. Is Sarah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so oh, there she is. All right, so Sarah Zimmerman, I'm just unmuted your line. You can go ahead and make your comment. Make sure you state any organization you might be from too. So you can go ahead.
Hi. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Go ahead.
I apologize. I just got in, so correct me if I'm missing any rules. My daughter had a big owie that needed dealing with, so I'm getting on late here.
You just got 3 minutes. That's all.
Sure, will
Yep.
do. And yes,
All right.
step in when I'm cutting it close. I'm just an individual, not from any organization. Excuse me. I just wanted to speak. I'm personally my family, we're huge fans of solar. We put in solar panels last year that completely offset our electric use. And we have geothermal. Actually, honestly, we're huge geothermal fans too. We lived in Indiana for quite a number of years, and there's a big geothermal manufacturer down there, and a lot of people use it. It's a great source of energy heating, and it allows us to offset with solar very easily, low emissions, very efficient. They had some great incentives down there that I could recommend, but pardon me. We wanted to speak in support of solar for individuals. We think it's a really great way for people to be able to make a pretty significant difference. Sorry, just trying to keep my train of thought. And as well as environmentally, it's an excellent economic choice for us. So for us, our payback period is 8 years. Unfortunately, with some of the changes, it's now this year. If you were putting it in, it would be stretched out by quite a number of years, because at least our electric company only gives you 50% back now, rather than a 1-to-1 a net metering. So that was my biggest comment. Kind of an aside, I would love to see Michigan do something about, I'm not going to get the verbiage right, I apologize. So product life cycle management, materials start to finish, so that manufacturers are responsible for what waste they're producing, and for reclaiming things that they are producing, so that you end up having less waste. And if I have the slightest bit of a second, a third thing that I think would be awesome, I've lately been trying to figure out how, we live in the country, so we don't have pickup for our recycling. We want to be able to drop it off. I'd love to drop it off with the folks that are doing their best to recycle as much of it as possible, given that a lot of it doesn't actually get recycled. I'd love to be able to, kind of like a little scorecard, know which recycling companies are recycling the most, and be able to get some kind of feedback or information on that. So that's all I had to say. Thank you so much, and I'm really glad I squeaked down here on time.
Just in time. All right. Thanks for your comment, Sarah. All right. Next person we got up, and hopefully you guys are checking out the chat because you can see if you're on deck or not. So next person up is it's like Stephanie Osborne. So Stephanie, you can go ahead and make your comment.
Great, thank you. I second everything Sarah just said. My name is Stephanie Osborne. I have master's degrees in public health and urban planning and a bachelor's in sustainable business, and I'm currently a National Science Foundation Transformative Research and Urban Sustainability Training Fellow at Wayne State. In addition to what Sarah said, another impactful, cost-effective way to significantly reduce greenhouse gas emissions while also potentially improving health outcomes would be to reduce food waste. Across the food system, food waste squanders astounding amounts of water, land, labor, fossil fuels, fertilizer, nutrients, seeds, and financial capital. The elimination of food waste could really prevent the release of 79 billion tons of greenhouse gases, making it the third best solution for fighting climate change, and that's according to Project Drawdown. Food waste is the highest contributor to landfills, and it contributes to the release of methane, a powerful greenhouse gas, as the food decomposes. As each food item is wasted, so too is every resource that was used to grow, harvest, transport, process, store, and dispose of that item, compounding the impact of the waste in multiple sectors. Unfortunately, despite the large potential for positive environmental impact, food waste is too often overlooked in the discussion of climate change. So I'm calling on you to ensure that it will not be overlooked in this plan. Food waste also has real public health implications. According to the Natural Resources Defense Council, the US is currently wasting 40% of the food produced, resulting in approximately $165 billion lost each year due to food waste. In the US, the average family of four spends $1,300 to $2,200 per year, on food that just ends up in the trash. Simultaneously, we can fight the rise in the number of people, including children, with preventable nutrition-related diseases while saving families money, simply by teaching them how to understand date labels, use all edible parts of the food, meal plan, and safely store and reheat leftovers. Reducing food waste can reduce the gap that is expected between the food available today and the food that will be needed in 2050, thereby helping to eliminate hunger. This is a solution that is scalable at all levels, from individual households to restaurants and large institutions to farms and grocery stores. Food reduction techniques can improve everyone's bottom line and health while reducing carbon emissions. Alongside education, legislation can play a key role in this, and the Healthy Climate Plan needs to include legislation around food waste and other strategies for reducing carbon neutrality. For example, we may follow the lead of France, which became the first country in the world to pass legislation that fines grocers of a certain size who discard unused food. Food waste reduction targets need to be set at all points along the food supply chain and at all consumer levels. Waste reduction incentives need to be developed to change behavior. Strong legislation can facilitate these changes and get more people and entities to reduce their food waste, thereby reducing our greenhouse gas emissions and moving us towards carbon neutrality. In summary, reducing food waste is an important piece of our strategy to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and become carbon neutral by 2050. It is a low-tech, low-resource solution that can result in large greenhouse gas reductions and improved public health. Thank you for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you for your comment. And Kimber, I'm going to have you go ahead and read off the names because I think there might be a few people that aren't here. So
Sure.
who is after?
Next is Marshall Clabo, and then on deck after that is Connie Boris.
Yeah, I don't have Marsha Clabeau here. And you said next one was Connie Boris.
Mm-hmm.
She also was not in attendance, so we can keep going, I guess.
Okay, Lisa Pasberg, spelled Pasbjerg.
Okay, I'm looking for. I don't see Lisa Pasberg. Some other Lisa's, but not Lisa Pasberg. What's the next one?
After Lisa Pasberg is Sean Sinacola Rodriguez.
I don't see Sean in attendance.
Okay. I see a couple hands up. I'm not sure if that's related, but after that is Peter Skornia, Skornia.
Nope, we don't have with Peter. And I'll just remind everybody, so what we're doing right now is people that might have pre-registered to attend and indicated they want to comment, then they may not have attended, or they might have attended the other listening sessions. So that could be why. So if they do pop in later, we can get them later. So go ahead, keep going.
Paul McCullough, McCullough.
There is no Paul.
Okay.
Attendance.
Carolyn Trapp, TRAPP.
And there is no Carolyn Trapp either. So.
Laura Judge, JUDGE.
Nope, not seeing Laura.
Okay. Ted Tansley, TANSLEY.
Oh, we do have Ted. He had to raise his hand. That's why I didn't see him. So, okay. So, Ted, it looks like I'm trying to unmute you, but it's telling me here that you're using an older version of Zoom. And so won't let you unmute. So, this does happen like every once in a while. What you can do is you can submit your comment in writing. You could try logging off and logging back in, and we'll come back to you. And when you log off, to update your Zoom. But unfortunately, I can't unmute you because it doesn't allow me to do that. So Ted, we'll come back to you if you want. You can go ahead and log off or submit your comments in writing. I apologize. Who's after Ted?
Terry Gates, GATES.
I got Terry Gates. Hold up. Well, he just disappeared.
Do you want to go with
there he goes.
Dana?
Okay, I got him.
Oh, you got it?
Terry,
Okay.
You should be able to unmute your mic. Somebody else jumped on, but at the exact time I was going to unmute you, so it bounced you around. So,
well, I'm
ahead,
so
Terry.
glad that I'm able to present after all those names.
Yeah. Okay.
So
go right
surprise.
ahead then.
Okay. Well, I am the Executive Director of Healthy Planet Strategies, and I'm also part of the Energy Production, Transmission, Distribution, and Storage Work Group. That's quite a mouthful. And I feel one of the most difficult tasks that we have for implementing a Michigan Healthy Climate Plan will be in influencing the mindset of those who need to make the transition or make a paradigm shift from their current comfortable standard of living. So gone are the days of carefree consumption of our natural resources, the burning of fossil fuels, and emitting greenhouse gases into what Al Gore calls the open sewer of our atmosphere. Federal, state, and local governments can decide on which targets to achieve, but without significant action at all levels and throughout all sectors, the objectives will be meaningless. It will be a tough sell to those who have been enjoying living with reckless abandon in the past. There needs to be an intentional deliberation for how do we influence the behavior and motivate others to do the right thing and to make the right choices. There will need to be a major PR campaign, well thought out, that inspires people. Incentives need to be created to guide others for what specific steps need to be taken and what the rewards will be when milestones are achieved. Significant sacrifices are going to need to be made for the greater good of the whole, and exemplars will need to be identified and lifted up. Influencers will need to be engaged. Millions of Americans were mobilized during World War II with a call to action when the whole nation responded to saving our democracy. The climate crisis is the greatest threat of our time. The task at hand over the next decade is much greater in scope, and that the future of humanity is at risk. But I don't think that the general public currently realizes what is at stake if we don't make significant reductions in our collective carbon footprint. Educating the whole of society will need to be done in a manner which prompts people to make the right choices while helping them feel good about the progress they are making. Every human has a duty to act for the benefit of society and the environment. People will need help in realizing the importance of their relationship with the environment and to foster a holistic culture of sustainability that encompasses the social, economic, and environmental benefits. People will need to feel that they are being supported and that they are being empowered on their path for creating strategies for a healthy planet. To be effective, it needs to be a bottom-up grassroots movement. Global problems can't be solved unless we all dramatically reduce the amount of production and consumption in our lives. There needs to be systemic changes throughout all aspects of society. Now is the time for bold collective action, and together we can create a green future where suffering is diminished, justice is upheld, and harmony is restored between people and nature. A sense of urgency needs to be conveyed with an emotional appeal. It won't be easy. Failure is not an option. Thank you for allowing me to share.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, we're gonna, looks like Ted's back. So Ted, I'm gonna see if I can get you on. There you go. So Ted, Ted Tansley, you should be able to unmute your mic and go ahead and make your comment.
All right, great, thanks. Yeah, I was using an older laptop. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we got you.
All right, so thanks for the time today. My comment is revolving around the transportation emissions. And I think we need to invest in non-motorized and mass transit infrastructure on a much larger scale within the state. We shouldn't be reliant on unproven autonomous technology to be our savior for reducing transportation emissions. And you got to consider that with the lifespan of current vehicles, the cost to subsidize replacing combustion engine with electric vehicles, and the simple reality that we don't have the resources to replace all of the cars and retain the same level of use that we're accustomed to. Not to mention the emissions, that aren't accounted for that are caused by mining and creating these new vehicles. All these are barriers which should be pushing us to consider all the options on the table, including proven technology, proven investment in transportation, in mass transportation, in our buses, our rails, our trails, non-motorized infrastructure, connect the state that way. And we should be instead working to make the state more like a model country like the Netherlands and in the city of Copenhagen that prioritizes moving people over cars, which actually saves lives when we do so. We should be making it safe, easy, and accessible for all people to bike, walk, roll, take transit throughout the state, subsidizing e-bikes instead of e-cars. Doing this would not only be cheaper in the long run, but also get us to achieve our climate goals faster and unlock significant amounts of economic wealth within the state. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your comment. Getting back to the list, Kimber, who do we have up next and on deck?
Dana Maines would be up next, and then Steve Ring on deck.
Okay, we don't have Dana. And then who was the next one?
Stephen Mering, M-E-R-R-I-N-G.
Yeah, I don't see Stephen Maring in attendance. So
Okay.
what's next?
Kenneth Cowing, Cowing.
There is not a Kenneth in attendance.
Okay, then I've got Julie Budd, Budde.
Okay, there's Julie. So Julie, you can go ahead and unmute and make your comment. Thanks.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to take a couple minutes today to talk about our food production. Many discussions about achieving carbon neutrality largely ignore one of the most significant, although lesser acknowledged, climate culprit of them all, industrial animal agriculture and factory farming. Livestock produces more greenhouse gas emissions globally than all automobile emissions combined, and scientists warn that emissions from the global food system alone would make it impossible to meet the central goal of the Paris Agreement, which is limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2050. An analysis from 2018 shows that while meat and dairy provide just 18% of our global calorie supply, they produce the vast majority of agriculture's greenhouse gas emissions, land use, and over half of the total water and air pollution as well. It has also been found that even the lowest impact meat and dairy products typically still cause more environmental harm than the least sustainable vegetable and grain growing. And unfortunately, our federal government currently supplies millions of dollars of subsidies to these factory farms. In Michigan specifically, our 272 factory farms have received over $103 million in federal and state subsidies, enabling them to produce meat and dairy products at well below their true costs. However, there are viable solutions at the state government level. I'm proposing redistributing subsidies and providing financial incentives for livestock and feed grain farmers to transition out of animal agriculture and into growing crops for direct human consumption, such as beans, wheat, fruit, vegetables, etc. And this could include guaranteed fair prices, supply management, tax breaks, and even incentives to set aside land for revegetation, which actually sequesters carbon out of the atmosphere. Incorporating climate change objectives into agricultural subsidies to reward mitigation is essential to avoid a further lock-in of unsustainable practices. The cost savings would then trickle down and work to catalyze a change in consumer choices away from carbon-intensive meat and toward plant-based alternatives, which is already a booming market. Reducing demand is the other piece of the puzzle, since dietary change can deliver environmental benefits on a scale not achievable by producers. The average US person consumes more than double the amount of meat than what is considered appropriate for a healthy diet.
I'm sorry, Julie, I think we just got you muted. So you got to unmute yourself. Sorry, hit mute. You were saying healthy diet.
Okay, great. I'll back up a little bit.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, so I was saying that the average US person consumes more than double the amount of meat than what is considered appropriate for a healthy diet. Even just decreasing meat consumption could reduce CO2 emissions in the US by 10.4 billion metric tons per year. And if every Michigan resident went just one single day without animal products, it would save 200 million pounds of carbon in just that one day. So to help achieve this, we can invest in outreach and public education of the environmental and health benefits of eating even a little less meat. Campaigns such as Meatless Mondays have been adopted widely by public institutions, for example, by public schools in Baltimore and several universities, including Oxford. And nearly 40% of those surveyed said the campaign has influenced their decision to cut back or consider cutting back on meat. So in summary, I know diet can be a sensitive topic, but shifting away from this resource-intensive food production has been identified as one of the most impactful solutions for mitigating climate change and achieving carbon neutrality. It's a win for farmers, the planet, and the health of all Michiganders. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today, and it's really inspiring to hear everyone else's thoughts and ideas as well. So thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Kimber, who's up next?
Next up is Annalicia Honkanen, Honkanen.
All right, and I got Annalicia, so you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hello, my name is Annalicia Honkanen, and I've been a lifelong Michigander, and I think there's a few things I'm going to mention tonight, but I think the biggest thing that we can do to get to net zero is to show support for a carbon fee and dividend. While this is something that is more on a federal level, it's really easy to see why this will bring carbon emissions down to livable levels by 2050. There's a lot of info online about support for something like this, including why 3,000 plus economists have agreed that this is a good idea. If you'd like more information, you can also view a simulator online, which will show you different future projections on climateinteractive.org. I think aside from that, really investing in our public transportation is something that our state really needs to do. I think we are years behind where we should be. I think we need, options greater and more expansive than, the Q line, including electrification of transportation as well. As well as creating charging stations right off major highways for electric vehicles. We can also create more incentives for sustainable energy options for businesses and residents, which could also charge such stations. So as far as solar and wind energy. I also believe that we can support regenerative agriculture methods for Michigan farmers, such as no-till and cover crop usage, and just as far as like educating our farmers and getting the resources out there for them. There was some conversation about food waste as well. I think that some sort of statewide composting should also be considered. Central Michigan University has already started to do this with great success. And with my last point, and this wouldn't necessarily help with measurable emissions, but it would help with capturing the carbon that's already in the air. I've always thought that planting more trees, especially in open areas where they know they will not be cut down within at least a century, such as highway turnpikes and medians. I think that would also increase, a healthy environment for Michigan. So I hope that our government of the beautiful state of Michigan takes these suggestions into consideration. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
All right, thanks for your comment. Next up,
Rita Mitchell.
Okay, Rita, you should be muted. Go ahead.
Right. Hi, this is Rita Mitchell. I am speaking for myself, but I am a strong supporter of moving to a carbon-free Michigan. And I see what's important as to really focus on getting us away from fossil fuel strategies. And that includes all pipelines, including the Line 5 pipeline that travels through 645 miles of Michigan through and underneath many streams and water and sources of water in the Great Lakes that you know of. We need to move that away from that and to enable all users of energy and those who need heat to transition to different sources that are renewable, that can be implemented now. And if we need to subsidize that, then we have to do that. This is going to be an expensive process, and we have to be ready to make that, to pay what is needed to make this change, and to follow some of the guidance that some of the other speakers have said just before. We have to be ready to use only as much as we need. And I think that's what I would like to say about all this. We do not need excess, any of us, excess of any kinds of things, but we need just enough. If we use just enough, I think we'll be in better shape. So I would like to see the MPSC, the Michigan Public Service Commission, focus on moving the energy sources to others and guiding our current energy providers away from fossil fuels. DTE is replacing gas lines into private homes right now and ensuring themselves of a future gas-supported infrastructure That is not what we should be doing right now. It is just the wrong direction. We need to make sure that those who companies that make energy, DTEs, consumers power, et cetera, are charged for the externalities that they produce for the coal and the gas emissions that happen in Southeast Michigan specifically.
In 1 minute.
Okay. And we should work to install renewable energy sources as soon as possible. We need to remove the cap on solar installation. That's part of the House Bill 4236 that's being considered right now, and really enable implementation of renewables and avoid false renewables like nuclear power and any biofuels like burning wood or burning animal waste, which are really not viable. So that's really, those are my thoughts. I want us to move to a clean energy future. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your comment. Sorry about that. All right, go next. Kimber, who do you got?
I've got Dr. M.K. Dorsey.
Don't see M.K. Dorsey on my list of attendees here. Or
Okay.
Dorsey.
Mac Dashney, D-A-S-H-N-E-Y.
Nope, no Mac Dashney.
Then Abigail Clark.
No Abigail Clark.
Also a Breece Clark. B-R-E-C-E, no?
No Breece Clark in attendance? No.
Okay, Bob Erland, I-R-L-A-N-D.
No, I'm not seeing Bob Ireland in attendance here.
All right, after that, I've got Lisa Patrell, P-A-T-R-E-L-L.
I do have a Lisa Patrell. So,
all right.
Oh, well, she just disappeared. Hold on a second. Did she unraise her hand or something? Or okay, hold on a second, Lisa. All right, I got you. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. I want to ditto what Rita said and all the excellent other speakers. I'm also from Washtenaw 350. Decades ago, I started our family's nest egg by buying microchips in the stock market instead of betting on which PC would prevail. It's smart to discern between source and manifest forms. Transportation as a contributor to Michigan greenhouse gases is a manifest form. The fuel is the source. Hence, transforming the automotive industry from combustion to electric engines is neither good nor bad. When a combustion engine fills its tank with petrol, that's emissions. Whenever an electric vehicle recharges its battery on a grid powered with gas, that's emissions too. Net zero and carbon offsets create similar sleight of hand. I have a dog. My dog poops. If I pick up the droppings from my front yard and drop them in my backyard, I've merely moved the poop. This is net zero. If I allow my dog to poop on other people's lawns and leave it, I have burdened others. This is like an offset. Net zero and carbon offsets are not the same thing as emissions reduction. Moreover, net zero and offsets are contrary to environmental justice. Reduction means producing less. Producing less greenhouse gases requires using less energy and using renewable sources of energy. As a Michigan taxpayer, I'm requesting that this Eagle Initiative document actionable greenhouse gas reduction recommendations. Reductions are needed, for example, for energy efficiency from homes to utility plants. Recommendations are also needed for renewable energy production, as well as for the grid's secure, non-leaky, minimal footprint transmission. Senator LaFave has proposed replacing housing stock in the Upper Peninsula.
1 minute.
Energy efficiency standards for that. Representative Robbie has sponsored a bill to remove the cap on solar. Let's have a renewable retrofit pathway to accompany that. Congresswoman Dingell is sponsoring bills to promote EVs. Let's have a plan for geothermal charging powered station for every parking space. When I imagine this, I see jobs, trade jobs, tech jobs, high-paying jobs, permanent jobs. What brought both my grandfathers here from the mines in Pennsylvania were Detroit's high-paying jobs at Ford. Michigan is its water and its workforce. Eagle has the opportunity to make policy that protects our water and supports our workforce. If Michigan can pioneer the bits and parts of a renewable energy infrastructure, then Michigan can become the source for the varied manifest forms. EVs are only one of them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Kimber, we're going to go back. I see that earlier we called Abigail Clark. So Abigail Clark, I see her in attendance now. So I'm going to unmute your line, and you can go on mute and make your comment. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for holding these, and I appreciate the opportunity. The point I wanted to make is not in regards to, it's in regards to a broad concept that I think is often left out of the way we think about environmental policy, especially in Michigan, and that involves our land use and suburban sprawl and job sprawl, and the impacts that has broadly on our emissions, and additionally, water pollution impacts, air pollution impacts across the board. So basically in the past, in my lifetime, essentially, I'm in my late 30s, Michigan's population has grown very, very little, very slowly. It's been basically stagnant. Yet at the same time, our land consumption, our footprint of developed land around the state has grown and grown and grown and grown year after year. There is more and more pavement, more roads that need to be maintained. It's frankly frightening when you think of it in terms of per capita, per taxpayer, how many square feet of pavement each of us taxpayers are responsible for maintaining versus 2 generations ago, when there aren't more taxpayers, but there is, tremendous amount more roadway. And it's because basically there's no policy. We don't do anything to reduce or control suburban sprawl and job sprawl in our state. Certain areas have tried to address it, Ann Arbor passed its green belt almost 2 decades ago now. So there have been very minimal local regional attempts to contain this phenomenon, but fundamentally, Michigan is going to have a terrible time reining in its carbon emissions if we don't make any attempt to plan and have some policy on development. When big employers come to our state, and I think a great example of this recently is what Mayor Duggan and Chrysler worked together to redevelop some major parcels in Detroit for a new factory on already blighted used land to redevelop that into a productive use. Michigan has to do so much more of that and so much less paving over of green space if we are going to have a chance to significantly reduce our carbon emissions, because every vehicle mile traveled, even if we switch over to EVs, will still consume energy. More big houses, more spread out. It's a fundamental problem. Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, thanks for your comment. All right, who we got next, Kimber?
We have Idris Mutar, Mutahr.
Okay, I see him there. Idris, okay, you can go ahead. I just unmuted your line.
Hi, this is Idris Muhtar. I'm with Motor City Freedom Riders. We're an organization of bus riders based in Metro Detroit, organizing for better transit. I wanted to speak specifically towards the transportation question and sort of the goal of moving towards carbon neutrality through autonomous and electrification. I think there are a few significant barriers to using those technologies to achieve carbon neutrality. And that's specifically that our electric grid is not prepared for that type of energy load to be incorporated into the energy grid. We would need to convert the entire fleet of automobiles to electric. And we would also need to make sure that the sources of electricity themselves are generated through sustainable means, whereas they're currently through coal and other forms of fossil fuels. And an alternative to autonomous and electric vehicles that is, unfortunately, I feel ignored by the current administration often and does not get as much attention, are public transportation and non-motorized transportation alternatives. And unlike the autonomous and electric technologies that are sort of on the horizon, as Ted mentioned earlier, there are a lot of models that are actually successful that the current that the state of Michigan could really build on. And I'm thinking specifically of the fast service operated by Smart. When they implemented their regional service from Detroit to Pontiac, a bus route on Woodward Avenue, it doubled ridership. It was effective at changing people's behavior because when you build it, they will come. If you look at Mogo, it's a now regional system of bike share that has incorporated electric pedal assist bikes. It's really comparable to some of the systems in any great city that I've been to. Pedal assist technology really makes it accessible, and they also have a great model for making it affordable.
1 minute.
And also looking at the infrastructure that the city of Detroit has built. Whether you're talking about the DeQuinder Cut Greenway, the Joe Louis Greenway, or the protected bike infrastructure. I think you could see this incorporated in communities all over the state of Michigan. Really what it takes is making it a political priority and investing money in building the infrastructure. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your comment. Next up.
Next is Hillary Hunt, H-U-N-T.
Okay, Hillary, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great,
right
thanks
ahead.
so much. So thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm a natural resources professional working in conservation in Kalamazoo. And I urge the Council on Climate Solutions to model the solutions for Michigan on the Green New Deal resolution, originally introduced in 2019 and recently reintroduced last month. The Green New Deal is the only national policy proposal that actually faces the enormity of this crisis. We all know that we need to get to zero emissions as fast as humanly possible. And actually, if we don't do it by 2030, we will have dire consequences. So 2050 is really not soon enough based on the last IPCC reports. So we have about 10 years to change the world, no pressure. And that will require massive investment in the economy and, most importantly, completely decarbonizing the entire energy industry. So the tenets of the Green New Deal, which I can read from the book on the topic right now, are to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions through a fair and just transition, create millions of good high-wage jobs, and ensure prosperity and economic security, invest in the infrastructure and industry of the US to sustainably meet the challenges of this century, secure clean air and water, climate and community resilience, healthy food, access to nature, and a sustainable environment for all. And finally, to promote justice and equity by stopping current, preventing future, and repairing historic oppression of frontline and vulnerable communities. Specifically, they're thinking about Indigenous communities and pipelines. So these are not just vague principles. There are entire books, PDFs, and presidential candidate policy proposals written on exactly how to do this. They include plans on redirecting fossil fuel subsidies toward investment in renewable energy rollout, creating tens of millions of local jobs and clean energy generation, retrofitting old buildings, investing in local food systems, which so many other folks have commented on this evening, mass transit systems, and carbon sequestration in sustainably farmed agricultural land. So all of these things are actually things that we already know how to do. It's just that we need to redirect our priorities. And so here's something even more amazing that I shock my friends with. So representative polls show that more than 80% of Americans actually support almost all of the key ideas in the Green New Deal, which is sourced from Politico. And that's because it bundles aggressive environmental priorities with investments in infrastructure, jobs, and transportations, which are issues that all Americans across the political spectrum are worried about. So this is a countrywide reinvestment in our health and survival, and we do not have the time for piecemeal solutions. Please do not fall into the trap of incrementalism. At a time when so many Americans are disillusioned by the ability of government to improve their lives, sweeping statewide and national policy is the only answer. They expect you to only offer small answers. So I say we should surprise them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kimber, who do we have there?
Next up is Griffin Smith.
Okay, Griffin, I've muted your line. You can go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. My name is Griffin Smith. I live in Ossining, Michigan, and I just graduated from Columbia University with a master's degree in environmental science and policy. Before that, I obtained a master's degree in economics as well as a bachelor's degree in economics. Through the last 2 semesters of my graduate coursework, I have done research on a cement factory in Alpena, Michigan. It once held the designation of the world's largest cement factory. It has subsequently been surpassed by factories in India and China. But this cement factory has been in operation on Lake Huron for over 100 years. The nature of making cement is very carbon intensive. When you burn limestone, a significant amount of carbon dioxide is released. And so my research is focused on ideas that would allow this one cement factory, which I can view from outside my family's home in Ossining, Michigan, how it can tangibly reduce emissions today. Through my research, I have developed 2 proposals, and all that is required is an influx of capital from the state or from the federal government. These projects are, shovel ready, and although I support the ideas of the Green New Deal, I do believe that incrementalism is important if we are to make action today. And so I urge the state to consider proposals like the ones that I have for a sector that has been identified as energy intensive and carbon intensive. I thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing capital being given to companies that are willing and able to make investments to reduce emissions. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for your comment today. Let's see here next. Who's up next, Kimber?
It's Mark Smith.
I do not see a Mark Smith. So I guess we keep going.
Okay, after Mark is Janelle Stewart.
No Janelle Stewart.
Okay. After Janelle is Bill Bostick, B-O-S-T-I-C-K.
We do not have a Bill in attendance.
Next is Michael Schneider, S-C-H-N-E-I-D-E-R.
You see Michael Schneider. So Michael Schneider, you can go ahead and unmute your mic.
Thank you. I'm concerned that we haven't yet seen a realistic vision for an electric grid in Michigan that's carbon neutral. We often hear that we should use more renewables, and we should, but there is rarely, if ever, any mention of increasing nuclear power. In 2019, the state of Michigan consumed 117,000 gigawatt hours of electric power. Is it realistic to provide that much energy with wind and solar? For example, assuming we're using modern, efficient solar panels, it would take 101,000 football fields of solar panel area and double or triple that in land area to produce all of Michigan's electric grid energy. where would all those solar panels go? Again, for example, let's assume we were to produce all of Michigan's electricity with 2.5 megawatt wind turbines of the type that DTE Energy put in their just opened Polaris Wind Park. It would take 18,000 of these wind turbines, which for efficiency would need to be spaced over 1.9 million acres or 1.7 million football fields of land. Again, where would all those wind turbines go? That's 12 times more than the number Michigan has now. If we were to power our electric grid with all renewables, we might end up with solar farms and wind turbines practically everywhere we look. I don't think we want to ruin the serenity and the natural beauty of Michigan's beaches, wilderness areas, and parks. The numbers I provided don't even consider the problem of intermittency of wind and solar or the rapid increase in the electric power consumption that we can expect as fossil fuels are phased out. The other green alternative is nuclear. 6 or 7 nuclear plants the size of the 2 gigawatt Cook nuclear facility would generate as much electricity as Michigan uses today. We could increase nuclear energy generation to replace all of Michigan's fossil fuel plants by adding 4 to 5 more plants the size of the Cook plant, or 8 more 1 gigawatt reactors the size of Fermi 2. We would also benefit from the safety of modern reactor design, which effectively eliminates the possibility of a meltdown. The answer, I think, is much more aggressive promotion of rooftop solar, more promotion of wind turbines on farmland, and also a significant increase in the number of nuclear plants to at least double the 3 that we have now. This would make our clean energy goals practical and achievable. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, who we got next?
We have Scott Urbanowski, URBANOWSKI.
Okay, Scott, I see you there, and you can unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for holding this. Greetings from sunny Kentwood, Michigan, over by Grand Rapids. I think it's important that we talk about big, structural change, if you will, big ideas, and making sure that institutional players like the state government, like big businesses, are doing their part. But individuals also have an important role that we can play. And I think the state needs to do more to foster that kind of individual action on behalf of the environment. For example, as an individual here in Kentwood, I've often struggled with economic hardship, which means it's not easy for me to afford an electric vehicle, but that's what I would like to be able to afford. I want my next vehicle to be union made in America, but I also want it to be electric or at least I should say hybrid. So I want that to happen, but it's not always it's not in my price range yet, and it's not in the price range of a lot of people who are struggling economically. Also, there aren't very many electric and hybrid charging stations around yet. There are certainly a lot of big goals and ambitions towards building those, which is great. But we need to have more electric charging stations throughout the state, not just in urban areas, but even in rural areas. If I'm driving around, if I want to go up to visit Mount Pleasant, I went to CMU when I was younger. So if I wanted to go back to college and visit Mount Pleasant, I want to be able to charge my vehicle up there. I also want more public transportation options that go beyond just individual cities. For example, the Interurban Transit Partnership, the ITP here in the Grand Rapids area, that covers 6 cities. But if you want to go to Holland or Muskegon or even Lansing, your public transportation options are limited. So I think we need to do more to promote public transportation, especially not just within urban areas, but between urban areas and also including rural areas as well. So just that's what I'm thinking about today, is how can we make sure that more people are able to take individual action in addition to statewide players taking large collective action. Thanks again for hosting this, and have a great night.
Okay, thanks for your comment. Who we got next? Let's see.
We have Ian Fitzgerald.
Okay. I did see Ian, I believe, so hold on a second. Oh, there he is. Okay, Ian Fitzgerald. All right, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
Thanks, Jim. I thought I'd try to make it easier by raising my hand, but I think I might have made it a little bit harder.
You popped up to the top of my list. So
okay. Thank you for moderating this, and James for the introduction. I'll try to keep my comments rather brief. My name is Ian Fitzgerald. I'm the policy coordinator with Michigan United Conservation Clubs. We're the largest state-based conservation organization with more than 200 affiliate clubs within Michigan, as well as 40,000 members. So I'm excited to share some work that started in late 2020 and it was led by ourselves and National Wildlife Federation, who's our national affiliate. And so our broad goal is normalizing climate change within the hunting and angling community, as well as educating legislators and policymakers. I think I'll be one of the first people to admit that the hunting and angling community sometimes, and maybe it's mostly just our membership, isn't forefront on the knowledge or even accepting of climate change. So we wanted to start developing materials and paperwork, not talking about, the cause of climate change or why we're here, but, possibly what we found, the messaging tools that we use that we found worked is what we're seeing in the field. So we talked to experts in the field. And so for deer, we talked to Jim Hamill from the UP, who's known as a deer biologist expert. And he explained to us some of the last 20 years what deer have been seeing in the field as a result of climate change in Michigan. And so that's how we kind of got to developing Changing Seasons. It's a briefing document that's developed by NWF and MUCC, and it covers these climate impacts to fish and wildlife that we've been seeing, such as shorter migrations in waterfowl, northward regression of upland birds, disease challenges within our deer herd, warming trout streams, greater frequency of below days on the Great Lakes, which prevents charter fishing trips. And to put this into perspective, there's 11.2 billion is the annual contribution to Michigan's economy by hunting and angling every year. So, as a why from the economic factor, you've got that, not only just the environmental benefits that working on climate change would provide. So communicating this to our membership as well as legislators, letting them know that the hunting and angling community should be contacted is kind of what I wanted to be here today. And I want to offer this PDF and document to council members directly. So I don't think I can type in the chat, but I'll follow up with an email. And while I still have time, some of the recent policy examples that we've advocated, thank you, that we've advocated for is, for example, House Bill 4236, which would lift the distributed generation cap on solar for private individuals. So currently we're getting close to that cap. And if we can allow more homeowners to install solar on their own properties, then we could potentially alleviate pressure on large swaths of public land for solar development, which is currently happening. So MUCC is excited to be engaging in the space. We have it historically in the 70s and 80s, and I'm really happy and proud to be on this team to try and get our conservationists, hunters, and anglers on board with the way the state's moving. So thank you very much.
All right, thanks for your comment. And Kimber, I think the last person on our list of people who registered to comment is, what's the first name?
Diana.
Okay.
Diana Corpolongo.
Yes. Okay, Diana, I see you, and you should be able to unmute yourself now. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, well, thank you so much for hosting this session. I came into it kind of expecting to hear a plan that was already formed and give an opinion on that. So this is very exciting, and I'm a little underprepared compared to some of the other speakers. But I just want to echo what Sarah, Terry, and Rita said early on. They made very good points. But I'm just here to represent both rural and urban homeowners in the state of Michigan. The current energy waste reduction policies in the state of Michigan are not really conducive to reducing our carbon emissions. They're far more conducive to keeping natural gas customers of DTE and Consumers Energy than they are contributing to the reduction of greenhouse gases. So I ask that Eagle do everything that they can to shift energy waste reduction from pure kWh electric savings and pure natural gas savings to actually reduction in carbon emissions. And we can do that through the use of heat pumps of all varieties for both commercial and residential businesses. And that's all I have to say on the matter. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your comment tonight. Okay, folks, so that's our list of people who pre-registered and asked to comment. Now we're going to go to everybody else in attendance. And, I ask you, if you want to make a comment, go ahead and click the raise hand icon, and we'll call on you in the order in which you raised hand. We had several people who've had their hand raised the whole time, so we'll probably start with them first. If you're on the phone, and we have a phone-in caller, if you'd like to make a comment on the phone, just hit #2, and that'll raise your hand on your phone, and we'll be able to unmute you that way as well. Some of you we may have missed. Maybe you checked in after we called your name. If you want to make a comment, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll go through you. So what we'll do now is, again, we'll start calling off names here with hands raised. And again, you have 3 minutes to make your comment. Please be mindful of that time. I'll give you the 1-minute warning, and wrap up, when you got 1 minute left. And remember too, if you need to submit more comments or you didn't get everything in, you can always submit them written to the email address that's on the screen. And for those phone-in callers, I'll read that off. The email address is egle-climatesolutions@michigan.gov. All right, so our first person with their hand raised is Dawn Fleming. Dawn, go ahead. You can unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I came to this meeting unprepared to make comments, but after hearing the comments of so many educated and involved people, I just wanted to reiterate some of the things that have been mentioned. First of all, I think the main thing we have to remember is that we have to reduce our usage first and foremost. We are living at an unsustainable lifestyle right now in Michigan and in the United States. And of course, we should reduce our use of fossil fuels by increasing wind and solar production, by increasing efficient electric mass transportation, both within the inner cities and between the cities in our great state. And also, right now there's a lot of buildings in the inner city that are vacant because people have, I guess it's one good thing that has come from COVID is people are working from home, and to encourage more of that for people not to have to commute. So now we have all these empty offices, which really could be converted into apartment buildings. So we can, instead of having all that urban sprawl, we can bring people back into the cities, and it reduces pollution from people that are commuting. They can live right in the downtown area, have grocery stores and everything there, and convert a lot of that office space into apartments. So revitalizing the inner cities that way, I think, should definitely be part of the plan. We have to just totally get away from coal and all fossil fuels. It doesn't do any good to have a lot of electric cars if the electricity that they're burning is being produced from coal. That isn't really solving the problem at all.
1 minute.
We need to stop investing in fossil fuels, including pipelines, and no carbon offsets. I totally agree with that. That really does not solve the problem. But the main thing is that we need to ban fracking. The big elephant in the room that nobody ever talks about is how are we going to stop burning natural gas to heat our homes in Michigan? I don't know what the percentage is, but I think most people do burn natural gas, and I've struggled with it myself for my own home. How can I stop burning natural gas? I can't really say I should stop fracking. We should stop fracking if I'm using natural gas, but we have to stop fracking. And that is like the big elephant in the room no one talks about. I think that we need to really put some thought into how are we going to transition away from natural gas. Probably have to convert our houses to heat with electricity, and therefore we're going to need to have efficient electricity from wind and solar. So It's a big problem. I think the person who said 2050 is too late is right on target. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your comment. We'll go next to John Hodge, and then I'll say on deck. On deck next is Michael Buza. So John, you can go ahead and make your comment.
There, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, very good. So my name is John Hodge. I live in Ann Arbor. I'm an engineer and have worked on energy systems of various sorts, both on the use as well as on the production side. And when I think about energy use, efficiency is always something that comes up. A number of people have mentioned that. And when we talk about efficient energy use, one of the things that comes into play is storage. Now, nobody's talked about this as far as hydrogen. Green hydrogen has been proposed as a solution in many circles. Green hydrogen makes up a very small percentage of hydrogen production these days. And if you look at utilizing hydrogen in a cycle, a hydrogen type cycle, where you produce it and then you use it, it winds up being less than 50% efficient to do that. Compare that to pumped hydro, like at the Ludington pumped hydro station there on Lake Michigan. That storage system is about 70% efficient. So it uses electricity in and electricity out, and it's 70% efficient. Meanwhile, batteries are higher than 95% efficient, which is why, of course, we're seeing so much battery use and production or development for vehicles as well as stationary uses. So I think those kind of things tell me that what we need to be doing is electrifying and not using fossil fuels, not using even natural gas. We need to get out of it. We shouldn't have to be using it even for cooking or for heating our homes, as the last person mentioned. And so what does that mean? Well, for heating, it means we need to be looking seriously at heat pumps and geothermal exchange wherever possible. That way we can use or require a lot less electricity to get a certain amount of heat. And so that winds up being a solution. Another thing we need to do is consider electricity for food preparation, food production, electrified agriculture, and certainly, as has been mentioned with several people, electric transport. We need to be going in that direction. Even though right now, today, there's a lot of coal production, but in 10 years, that won't be the case. So we really need to get on the bandwagon with that. Electric vehicles, electric charging stations need to be a must. And then the thing we haven't really talked much about, a couple of people mentioned it.
Got 2
and
minutes?
That's
Or 1 minute, sorry.
production. That's electricity production. We need to consider, of course, using renewables wherever we can. Every rooftop ought to have solar panels on it. But we also need to look very seriously at nuclear, as one gentleman brought up. Nuclear is, I think, for the state of Michigan, the only way that we're going to be able to get all of our energy without there being greenhouse gas emissions in the process. We should be looking at small modular reactors. That is a technology that has been in development and is beginning to be brought out, used on a small scale. These can be applied or used in the application of combined heat and power, which again gets us good source of heat where it can be used, as well as electricity. And also, of course, along with combined heat and power, we need to have more district energy systems, both cooling and heating, wherever we can in small communities, college campuses, and things like that. Let's see. I think that's it. But thank you very much for having me.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, so next up is Michael Buza, and after that is Avery Wynn. So Michael Buza, you're unmuted. You can go ahead and mute yourself.
Okay, thank you for allowing me to talk tonight. I heard a lot of good comments. Mike Buza from the Sierra Club. I'm also on the Council for Climate Solutions, the Energy Production, Transmission, Distribution, and Storage work group. We are in serious trouble and need to start acting like it. We need to develop a serious plan to reduce greenhouse gases across all sectors very quickly and immediately implement it. We also need to work with solar and wind farms at the township level, where there's a lot of resistance to their development. This resistance is being funded by the coal industry. This needs to be seriously addressed. This seems to be a choke point for our progress at this point. Also, individuals need to be allowed to participate in this effort by lifting the cap on solar and allowing for community solar. This is a problem right now for us. Even if we could turn off all greenhouse gases tomorrow, things will continue to get worse for years and decades. Scientists tell us that wildfires, drought, food shortages, and unpredictable weather will get worse, even if we turn off the greenhouse gases tomorrow. We cannot take cheating measures like offsets. We can cheat with human beings, but Mother Nature knows if there is cheating and will not accept it. This means we need to bring the entire population along, all races and income levels. To do anything less means a failure of the plan. To repeat a famous quote, failure is not an option. We will suffer enough from our inactions to this point. Further inactions or slower action means dramatically greater suffering for all. We need to live a more simpler life. I hope further choices are wise ones. Thank you for allowing me to talk.
All right, thank you. All right, next up is Avery Wynn, and then after that, Griffin Smith. So Avery, oh, so I'm getting a warning here, Avery, a Wynn that won't let me unmute you because you have an old version of Zoom. That's my warning that's coming up here. So you might want to log off, upgrade Zoom really quickly and come back on and we can unmute you, but it won't let me do that because you're running an old version of Zoom, I guess. So sorry about that. You can also submit your comments online or to the email box. Go to the next one, Griffin Smith.
Hi, thank you again for allowing me to provide a comment. Through my research last semester, I was able to calculate that the cement factory in Alpena, Michigan, was averting about 99,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide annually by generating 165 megawatt hours of energy through waste heat recovery. I was very pleased to find out about this environmental champion, which I did not suspect within the cement sector. What I found troubling is that the state of Michigan is no longer recognizing waste heat recovery as a sustainable source of energy. But what is happening is that the Scope 1 emissions are still going to be emitted into the atmosphere, but Lafarge-Holcim is capturing the heat from its kilns and is using that heat to create energy. And that, as a result, they are now drawing less from the grid than they would otherwise. And so I would encourage the state of Michigan to adopt measures to further incentivize companies like Lafarge-Holcim to improve the efficiency of waste heat recovery, because there is a lot of heat that is escaping that otherwise could be captured and be used to generate more energy that is emission free. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Elise Roski. Elise, you can unmute your line and go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, so I live in the Upper Peninsula where I'm a grad student and an atmospheric scientist at Michigan Tech University. And I wanted to first comment on how public transportation would improve my life here. So up in Calumet, there's a really awesome snow plow train that's on display. And I often wonder why it's not in use anymore and why there used to be rail transportation to the UP, but not any longer. Every winter, I take the risk of driving on dangerous roads when I need to go to the city or when friends need to travel downstate to visit their families. The only other option right now is the Greyhound bus, but it takes way too long and it's not affordable. I also wish I could ride a bus to work instead of shoveling my driveway each morning, driving on icy roads and finding parking. Public transit is opt-in. Nobody is forced to use it, but not providing it as an option does impose a burden on people because it forces them to assume all the costs and risks of using a personal vehicle with no way to opt out. And all of this goes for electric vehicles as well. So I think public transit should be invested in, subsidized, and provided by the state to its citizens as a mode of affordable, safe transportation. It should also connect rural folks to bigger cities where medical care, airports, or other essential things are. I've visited the mountains of Switzerland, where a train will take you to the smallest, tiniest villages, and from there, trams will take you to places where cars can't even go. So public transit adds to the charm of a small town and makes life more convenient. In order to become carbon neutral by 2050, we need to stop forcing everyone to drive personal vehicles and instead start building reliable and energy efficient public transportation. And lastly, I wanted to address the construction of new and replacement oil pipelines and other fossil fuel infrastructure. Reducing carbon emissions means, at the very least, no new fossil fuel infrastructure. I've also noticed that these new pipeline projects cause serious conflict and unrest in every community they pass through. So I think all new fossil fuel projects should be rejected, including fracking. And the state should help fossil fuel companies to decommission and safely dismantle existing infrastructure, like pipelines that are at risk of leaking, rather than replacing them. Yeah, I'll just end by saying new or replacement pipelines and other new oil infrastructure simply can't be accommodated in the plan to transition to carbon neutrality. And I really appreciate everyone's comments today. It was really inspiring and great ideas. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, still got several more hands up. So the next person that we have is actually on the phone, and their phone number ends in 1511. So you should be able to unmute yourself. Go ahead and make sure you state your name.
Yeah. Oh, hi. Yeah, I'm the only lone caller. This is Ed McCardle. I live in Waterford, Michigan. I lived 40 years downriver. I'm a Sierra Club activist for about 40 years. But yeah, a lot of good comments. And I thought I registered, by the way, or pre-registered. But anyway, I'll just touch on 3 or 4 different topics, and I can expand on them by emailing Climate Solutions. A couple of the easy, low-hanging fruit might be addressing light pollution, getting Dan Gilbert in Detroit to turn off some of those office lights that are not being used at night. There's other things that could be addressed with light pollution, directing the light downward so that you can use lower wattage, saving energy, et cetera, et cetera. Another topic, a little bit of a favorite of mine, is to reduce speed limits on our roadways. You know, there's rampant speeding now, and you know, the more you go over 55, 60 miles an hour, the more wind resistance and the more fuel and energy and carbon emissions rise exponentially. And one way to address that is what's happened in Washington, D.C. area, in a couple states, Ohio and Arizona, is photo enforcement of speeding. This would save police chasing down speeders, different confrontations. Another thing, I don't know if it's been mentioned, is solar panels on roofs. But if you can't use a solar panel on a roof, how about green roofs? Green roofs are very energy efficient. And for energy intensive industry, I've been following the 5G fiasco here. And 5G uses 3 to 4 times the energy that 4G uses. And the tech companies know this. And they say, well, we're going to be carbon neutral by 2050. You know, everybody's going to be carbon neutral by 2050, right? So
1 minute.
Also like to point out, 1 minute? Okay. Another big source of worldwide emissions, and I hope it doesn't happen in Michigan, but it's happening in some states and other countries, is Bitcoin mining. Bitcoin is huge, more emissions than a lot of countries like Argentina, Switzerland, et cetera. Okay, one other topic would be, I'd just like to point out that DTE and Enbridge belongs to this lobbying group that is trying to stop the electrification that we're trying to promote because they're big gas users. Okay. So thanks for listening. I'll try to expand on these topics and a couple others and send them into Climate Solutions. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for your comment tonight. Next up is Gus Tetschke.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I'm calling to support a green and publicly owned energy grid as a big part of the solution to our climate emergency. Since electricity generation and building heating by gas currently emit tremendous amounts of carbon into the atmosphere, we can no longer tolerate the big energy corporation dinosaurs that are blocking public progress to zero greenhouse gas emissions with their, focus on profits. And I'm looking at you, DTE, because you're planning to burn coal until 2040 and natural gas much longer than that. You're currently building another gas-fired power plant I believe it's in Clare, or maybe St. Clair. And that's unacceptable. We need to transition rapidly to solar and wind. And as part of that, we need to eliminate the cap on rooftop solar, completely eliminate it, and enable cities to build their own municipal solar and wind plants. These are parts of the green and publicly owned energy grid that will be a significant step in solving the climate emergency. If the big energy corporations continue to put us in danger the way they are, they need to go the way of the dinosaurs before we all do. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for your comment. Let's try Avery Wynn again. Avery, you should be able to unmute yourself. Avery, if you're there, you can unmute. Yes, there you go.
Hear me now? Excellent. So I'm Avery Wynn, they, them pronouns, and I'm a graduate student at U of M, and I'm calling from the Huron Valley Democratic Socialists of America. So essentially my question for Michigan's energy plan broadly is, why is it so dependent on existing business structures, particularly DTE, since so many people in Michigan use DTE? And frankly, the goal of 2050 is absolutely ridiculous. That's a terrible goal. We're taking 9 years to come up with a plan, essentially. It's basically working on DTE's schedule because 2050 is long enough off that DTE can claim they're making progress towards that. But if we want to make actual progress towards climate neutrality, we have to abandon DTE. There's no reason to think that they'll work better in the future if they've already been failing us as it is. So right now they have 59% of their electricity generated by coal burning. And compare that to 23 for the average utility in the United States. And it's frankly ridiculous that anyone would believe anything that DTE says about their future climate neutrality if this is how they are now. They're entirely investor owned, and they've been putting all sorts of lobbying money into politics. They put, I believe, $93,000 into lobbying in the first 6 months of 2020. So they're heavily invested in not changing anything they're doing while maintaining the appearance that they are. They're expensive to consumers, and I believe about 5 times more downtime than the average utility in the US. So I live in Ann Arbor, and I have DTE as my only power option. But in neighboring Chelsea, people buy their power from Chelsea Municipal Electric, or whatever the proper name for it is, because Chelsea has municipalized electricity. And Ann Arbor has a plan in the works, well, not at Ann Arbor, activists in Ann Arbor, called Ann Arbor for Public Power. And the goal there is to municipalize the electricity service so that the city owns the distribution and eventually the city owns production. This will stop the profit motive of DTE and replace it with the consumer-centric, community-centric motive of municipalized power. And this is the only way that we can reliably move towards carbon neutrality, is by abandoning these systems and actors that have consistently let us down and have consistently further entrenched ourselves in the current situation we're in. We need to take power back by municipalizing all around the state broadly, which is something that's allowed explicitly in the Michigan Constitution, and giving power back to the community. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Last hand that's up is Jesse Schulte. So Jesse, you should be able to unmute your line and go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. As you may know, Michigan has almost 10 million acres of farmland, and I work at one of the local conservation districts. There's over 75 in the state. And I take it this would be a great opportunity for the state of Michigan to put more investment into your local conservation districts. There was funding going to operations before 2018, and then we had the stock market issues. From Olson's book, The Soil Will Save Us, thousands of years of poor farming and ranching practices and modern industrial agriculture have led to the loss of over 80% of carbon from the world's soils. And today, your local conservation districts can actually help reduce climate change gases by protecting soil through cover crops. So you can actually reduce soil erosion, compaction, nutrient runoff from intense rainstorms as climate variability happens. Cover crops reduce water pollution risks and remove CO2 from the atmosphere. So they help our environment and reduce a farmer's footprint. So it could be a win-win politically for those farmers and Farm Bureau organizations that want to help their farmers, but also help the environment with the asset that they have. So just wanted to put that on record, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Great, thanks for your comment tonight. All right, and that is all the commenters we have that have indicated they would like to speak tonight, James. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
No, I want to really thank everyone who participated tonight, gave comments, really helpful. And looking forward to kind of continuing to kind of work with the work groups, with the council, and put some of these ideas, you know, on paper and before the governor, and moving forward to reduce the carbon emissions in Michigan and to achieve those goals of carbon neutrality. Again, I want to appreciate really kind of everyone's participation, and urge you, if you've got more detailed comments, to submit them in writing to the email address that's up on the screen, or on our website. There's also, you'll find it there. So again, appreciate it. Thanks, Jim, and Kimber for your help here. And look forward to working with all of you.
All right, thanks, James. Just want to remind you that email mailbox for those on the phone is Eagle-Climate Solutions. It's EGLE-Climate Solutions at michigan.gov. And the website we've established is michigan.gov/climate. That's where you can go. So just want to remind everybody that we are recording this meeting, and it'll be posted up on our YouTube channel. What I'm going to do is actually send everyone who registered an email with a link to that recording when it's available. So if you want to pass it along, you can. And for those that weren't able to join us, they'll be able to watch it when they want to. So thank you, everyone, for taking your time out of your night and commenting, and have the great rest of your evening. Thanks, everyone.